All right, Jodi, so you had mentioned in the past that you were really like trying to rush back to normal life, but that you realized you were going to have to create a new normal life. What were the steps that you took in order to get your new normal life?
Coming out of the hospital from my brain tumor journey, I really did still believe in the beginning I would be able to go to back to that normal life. And that's really what I was shooting for. That's why the first day out of the hospital, I woke up with an alarm clock at 7:30 in the morning, jumped out of bed thinking I needed to fix breakfast for my kids, and then very quickly realized I really needed to be in bed taking care of myself, recovering and resting rather than trying to go back to that. But it took me a while before mentally I registered with the fact that, guess what? I'm not going back to normal life. I've got to create a new life and a new normal. And number one, I would say there is a mental and emotional component to that where you have to be okay with that. In fact, I had a therapist tell me at one point in time, you have to grieve what you have lost before you can move forward and accept the future you have. And there was a point where I had to mentally let go of and recognize I'm not going back to that first life. This is a new life. It's a second life. I'm grateful for it. I'm glad I'm still here, but I do have to create a new normal for myself. So one of the things that I started doing, and at the time, I can't say that I recognized I was doing something, this was just how I knew to do things, is I started showing up for myself. I started putting dates on the calendar of when I was going to do things again. I showed up and said, this is the day I'm going to go back to work, this is the day I'm going to go back to church, and started putting these things on the calendar. But here's the thing, at that point in time, there were not enough things on the calendar by themselves to keep me going. It is very easy to fall into the trap of showing up for certain days and then those other days having your mental state drop down into the toilet because you don't have a reason to get out of bed. And when you are a sick person, like I was at that point in time, everyone around me was saying, why do you even get up? Why don't you just stay in bed and take care of yourself and get all the rest and recovery that you can? There is truth to that statement, and you do need to take care of your physical body. But just as important as your physical body is your mental self. And if your mind is not in a healthy, positive place, the rest of you is going to tank as well. And so even though I had started setting a few important dates for myself to show back up, I realized I needed more consistency. I needed a schedule and routine, even though my life at the time didn't have a dictated schedule and routine. So I'll tell you what I did. I offered to volunteer at my kids' school. And I didn't say I'll come in at lunch and eat lunch with the kids and watch the kids at recess. I said I will take the first shift in the morning right when the kids are coming to school. I volunteered 2 days a week for months and months and months, probably an entire school year when my kids were young, right after I had gotten out of the hospital, just a few months after I got out of the hospital. And here's what it forced me to do. I had to be up and ready at the same time that the kids were ready. No matter how I felt, whether I had a headache, whether I had dizzy spells or anything else going on, even when I didn't feel like it, I knew I needed to show up because I had made a commitment. I had had them put my name on the list and they were planning on me being there. Having that commitment then forced me to get myself out of bed even when I didn't want to. Trust me, there were times I thought about that and thought, why am I doing this? Especially on days where I showed up and they handed me a bunch of papers to cut out with scissors. And I thought, this is ridiculous. Anyone could be doing this. But then I realized that was not what it was about. It was not about what I was doing as much as it was that I was showing up for the commitments that I had made, and it was forcing me to get onto a schedule, to start trying to get back into some sort of consistency so I would have a pattern and a plan and an agenda and schedule for my life again. Even though that didn't look at all like it did before in my first life, it was helping me create the start of a new normal. Even though it was a decreased level of energy and enthusiasm and ability, it was still a start at getting me going. So that's a huge thing that you can do, is to create commitments and follow through with them. Because if you can't follow through and keep commitments for yourself, the reality is you won't do them for others either. Or if you do them for others but don't do them for yourself, then they're not going to be long-standing changes that you make in your life, because eventually you will let yourself down. If you're going to crawl back in bed, if you don't have a reason to get up, even if you give yourself a commitment, then eventually you'll do the same thing when someone else gives you a commitment. So you need to get to a point where you know you'll honor your commitment and the other person knows that you're going to honor that commitment. That's one of the things that was very helpful for me. Another thing I would say that was key is establishing my new inner circle. I have many, many friends and great associates that I'd worked with, and many people in my neighborhood and my inner circle before. But what I needed in this new normal were people I could count on in a different way than I had counted on before. It was going to be more than just some of the smaller things like seeing each other at soccer games or at church. It was going to be that I needed more help. I needed to be able to be vulnerable and ask for help more often and admit that we needed people. I realized I'm not always going to be good enough to pick the kids up from school to make sure everyone has what they need. And so in finding those people who expressed an interest in going on this journey and helping our family, we were able to find the people who could easily step in to help with rides when the kids needed it, to take me to appointments when I wasn't well enough to take myself, and to help find the resources that were needed, to step in and take on some responsibilities at work when I couldn't do them all myself. So by finding that inner circle and establishing a real good network of people that I could count on, it really helped lift me. The great thing is, in time, they were also able to count on me to help them, but I admit in the beginning, it was a lot of one way. Now, I say one way, but the reality is these people were already my friends, they were already my associates and colleagues, and so it had never been one way before. They saw it not as one way, but as a stepping in at the time when I needed it, which I truly did. And I am forever grateful for those people who stepped into my life at that time. One of the other things that we did with this inner circle is we recognized that I couldn't be the only means of support or help for certain things. So in the past, I might have been able to say, yes, I'm the main contact for my kids' teachers and for anything school related and for rides and assignments. Well, that was not always going to be the case. And through the help of some of these people in this new inner circle, we established a new and I believe better routine where we created a somewhat of an advocate system for my kids. And I was able to talk to the principal and explain to the principal that I needed my kids to be in class with at least one specific person. And we chose a friend based on whose parents were in my inner circle and said, I need my daughter Lindy to be in the same class as Mandy. So that if ever I can't be there to help with something, we know that Mandy's mom is going to be able to be there to help with Mandy, and she will also help with my daughter Lindy. Whether that's picking up for rides, whether that's getting assignments, but she always had someone who was watching out for her and advocating for her. And Mandy's mom became that advocate for my child as well. Things like that you may not think of just off the bat, but you have to start looking and considering that you're not going to be able to step into all of the things that you were doing. And while you can let go of some responsibilities, which I highly encourage you to do, let go and reprioritize, there are some things like children that you're not going to be able to let go of. So you have to find a new system to make that work. For us, a great way of doing it was to find that other advocate, to find that other child that my kids could be in a class with, that they would have that extra support when it was needed. And that was a good way of us moving forward, stepping up, figuring out a new normal in something that had never been normal before.